You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth. Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HoloNet has been approved. Please stand by. You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the HoloNet. You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. I'm Matt Holloway. For today's hour, it's week 1 of February 2017. We've got a lot to go over tonight. We're going to start out with the implications of the nuclear option in Judge Gorsuch's confirmation. Is it going to be fallout or mutually assured destruction? We'll get into a bit more of that. President Trump is causing trouble for conservatives in the United Kingdom. We'll touch on that a bit. We also have a legislative update from Capitol Hill. It seems that Utah's own Representative Jason Chaffetz wants to get rid of the BLM and the US Forrest Service's police and law enforcement units. How will that affect you? How will that affect me? If you live in the western United States, it's going to affect you a lot. We'll tell you why. And of course, Ted Cruz versus Bernie Sanders. Ah, yes. This is the one we've been waiting for. So let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we? First things first, we're going to talk about the nuclear option, why that matters to you, why it should. There's a little bit to go on here. If you don't remember or if you're not familiar with it, the nuclear option is a Senate rule that allows the Senate Majority Leader to essentially override the rules of the Senate chamber to allow a simple majority of 51 votes instead of a supermajority of 60 votes to move things along. Now, back in 2013, there was a bit of a hubbub with Harry Reid, then Senate Majority Leader. He chose to go ahead and invoke the nuclear option in order to push through the nominees of then President Barack Obama. Now, the question is, will he soon regret it? Now, looking back to Politico, this is 11/21/2013, when the Senate approved a historic rules change by eliminating the use of the filibuster on all presidential nominees except those to the Supreme Court. So that was the one point where a filibuster could still indefinitely delay a nomination, and it appears now that Mitch McConnell, as Senate Majority Leader, may choose to close that final loophole. Now, this will forever change the Senate as a deliberative body. This will literally prevent any minority party from ever even slowing down their majority opposition. Now, the implications for this are enormous. This is not an honorable defeat for the Democrats in Congress and for the Democrats in the presidency. This is grinding your foes into the dust. Now, I don't know if all of you are aware of it, but we also have a Holonet blog spot out there if you want to check out my work online. That's theholonet.blogspot.com. And I recently put up a story called Democrats Quit Congress, Form Alternative Government Based on Popular Vote, What If? And it's a hypothetical scenario that following this precise maneuver, the nuclear option allowing the Senate to force through Justice Gorsuch, the Democrats simply disengage and break away and seek to form an alternative government to the United States. And it's definitely an exercise in hyperbole. But the scary thing is it doesn't seem so far away. Does it seem terrifically unlikely to you? Or are you slowly nodding to yourself saying something to the effect of, it wouldn't surprise me, or I could see that happening, where the Democratic Party just walks out of Congress, drives up to Philadelphia, fills the convention center, and declares themselves a government in exile and asks for UN recognition. They basically claim that the popular vote constitutes a plebiscite, and they request that Hillary Clinton take her so-called rightful place as president. This is how divided we have become as a nation. And this is why we need to pause. We need to grip the mirror. We need to take stock. Are we uniting and protecting America? Or are we widening the already gaping maw between the left and the right? This could be easily ripped from the headlines of March 1st or April 1st, just as easily as any other nightmare scenario many dreamt up during the election, myself included. Simply put, we're not putting down our swords and our rhetoric after the election like we're supposed to, like we always have done. If anything, the vitriol and the resentment that was bred during the election has only intensified with each passing day. With every unanswered protest, with each executive order. Now, I agree with most of President Trump's executive orders to date, but what I don't agree with is the dismissive derision with which we are treating our fellow Americans on both sides of the aisle. Liberals care nothing for conservatives' valid reasons to support the president, and likewise, conservatives are blind and deaf to perfectly valid concerns voiced by the left. It's because the perfectly valid concerns on each side and valid reasons on each side are drowning in an endless cesspool of hyperbole, which is taken to the extreme in the reckless abandonment of truth and fact, because either my side won or my side lost, and that apparently makes it okay to have alternate facts and to have your own distorted view of reality. It is possible, and it's even laudable, to support your political philosophy, your party, and your president without grinding the opposition into the ground. Moreover, fervent opposition to the party in power can be respectful while still maintaining dignity and respect for the people and the offices in question. What has happened to us? Where are the days of gentlemen and ladies debating fiercely but cordially, leaving their political differences on the floors of their respective meeting halls and shaking hands warmly and embracing as fellow Americans? Are we so lost? Have we forgotten so quickly, after merely a century and a half, that the last time we were so divided as today, it cost roughly 620,000 lives? The last time this nation split itself with war and strife, it took 4 long, bloody years to stitch it back together. Families were torn apart so that some were never mended. The very land itself bore the scars of the horrific battles, and the graves still stand today. Virginia is still a divided state, West Virginia and Virginia. Can't erase that from the map. Roughly 2% of the population of this nation died in the Civil War, according to the Civil War Trust. So is it so difficult to imagine that sort of violence today? Only today, we're not divided on state lines. If you pull up the red versus blue map, it's down to counties, folks. We're divided house by house, street by street. It would be a guerrilla conflict, a nation in flames. I therefore implore you, my fellow conservatives, be gracious and magnanimous to our liberal countrymen. And I call on liberal Americans. You've just emerged from nearly a decade of liberal government. Give new solutions an opportunity. Give new ideas the room they need to succeed or fail. Give our government a chance to work the way our founders intended, with an earnest, principled, and respectful opposition. Everyone, just take a deep breath. Step back and look at each other. We're not enemies, but brothers and sisters who live and die beneath the same flag and beneath the same stars in the same skies. We're so close now. Too close to shattering what over 1.1 million of our servicemen and women have died to preserve since the Revolutionary War. President Reagan warned us all that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like to live in the United States where men were free. And the best way to fight for that freedom right here, right now, the best way to hold the line against the night, is not to fight each other, but to stand together as Americans. Now, I got a bit intense there, because I'm passionate about it. And not all of you are going to agree with me. So, yeah, after 8 years, it feels good to puff your chest up and say, yeah, our man Trump's in office now. Oh, they got it coming. Feels good when you see those executive orders get handed down, doesn't it? Peeling back everything that Obama did, one layer at a time. Striking down Obamacare. It's what we voted for. It's what we wanted. The reasons why may have been pure, but the how is equally important. We mustn't forget that. Take a short break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk just a little bit about President Trump causing some troubles across the pond for Prime Minister Theresa May and her Conservative Party. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on Lanterns Radio Network. Hey everybody, Matt Holloway here. I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about an amazing group of patriot entrepreneurs. Hot Pants LLC of Arizona is a welding, fabrication, and metallurgy company specializing in display weaponry and shields. A veteran-owned and operated company, they create interesting items inspired by their customers' ideas, as well as beautiful custom pieces of their own design. They're certified welders, credentialed by the Arizona Automotive Institute and Tidewater Community College, with a background experience from the U.S. military and the shipping industry. Hot Pants specializes in creating weaponry for cosplay, anime, video games, and the zombie apocalypse. No matter what your imagination can dream up, they can create a slew of interesting, creative weapons and shields, ideal for any costume or outfit. If you're engrossed in the world of video games or role-playing, let them arm your character with unique, high-quality weapons. You won't be disappointed by their artistry and attention to detail. Give them a call today at 602-900-6856. That's 602-900-6856. Order online at www.hotpantsmetal.com. That's HOTTPANTS metal.com. Also there on Facebook at facebook.com/hotpantsllc.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network and the HoloNets. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit with our friends across the pond. I tell you, I've been paying a lot of attention to the British media lately because they're going through it just as badly as we are, kind of riding the waves here of Brexit, as it were, just as we're riding the waves resulting from the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States. We're going to go real quick to a quick soundbite here from Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson of the Conservative Party, standing in for Prime Minister Theresa May as she flew back to the UK from her recent visit to Washington.
Let me begin by saying that this is not a UK policy, and this is not our policy, nor is it a measure that this government would consider. I've already made clear our anxiety about measures that discriminate on grounds of nationality in ways that are divisive and wrong. I'm able to provide the following clarification. The general principle is that all British passport holders remain welcome to travel to the US. We have received assurances from the US Embassy that this executive order will make no difference to any British passport holder, irrespective of their country of birth or whether they hold another passport.
That it gets even better than that. Upon her return to Great Britain, Theresa May, the Prime Minister, had a special questioning session, which is the PMQs, the Prime Minister questions, and it got very, very dicey, with Leader of the Opposition Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party seeming to take great issue with President Trump's recent actions, and we'll go to that audio now from Sky News.
First of all, on the policy that President Trump has introduced, this government is clear that that policy is wrong. We wouldn't do it. In 6 years as Home Secretary, I never introduced such a policy. We believe it is divisive and wrong. If he's asking me whether I had advance notice of the ban on refugees, the answer is no. If he's asking me if I had advance notice that the executive order could affect British citizens, the answer is no. If he's asking if I had advance notice of the travel restrictions, the answer is we all did, because President Trump said he was going to do this in his election campaign. The job of government is not to take to the streets in protest. The job of government is to protect the interests of British citizens, and that's exactly what we did.
President Trump has torn up international agreements on refugees. He's threatened to dump international agreements on climate change. He's praised the use of torture. He's incited hatred against Muslims. He's directly attacked women's rights. Just what more does the President Trump have to do before the Prime Minister will listen to the 1.8 million people who've already called for his state visit invitation to be withdrawn?
The Right Honourable Gentleman's foreign policy is to object to and insult the democratically elected head of state of our most important ally. Let's just see what he would have achieved in the last week. Would he have been able to protect British citizens from the impact of the executive order? No. Would he have been able to lay the foundations of a trade deal? No. Would he have got a 100% commitment to NATO? No. That's what Labour has to offer this country. Less protection for British citizens, less prosperous, less safe. He can lead a protest. I'm leading a country.
Wow, folks, I'm telling you, our conservative brothers and sisters across the pond have been taking a beating over the course of the past week regarding President Trump's policies. And it doesn't appear that our own Republicans in our very own Congress are so quick to establish that he pointed all of these policies out. He telegraphed them throughout his campaign. The silence coming from the Hill is deafening in defense of the president's policies. Now, one thing I am going to want to do, and I'm working on putting it together right now, is the Millennial Roundtable on the HoloNet. And I've actually got 4 gentlemen in mind. In addition to myself, you've got Will Bloodworth, who I've talked about before. I'm also inviting over 2 other deep political thinkers, one conservative and one who can best be described as a social justice warrior, much in the vein of Sean King. If you've ever read the work of Sean King, he's currently working for the Young Turks, I believe, Cenk Uyghur's team. So that's something that I want to examine in depth. One thing I would like to do with this group of men is I would like to sit down and discuss each and every one of President Trump's executive orders that he's made since his inauguration to really gauge how every different political persuasion is reacting and to start a genuine dialogue, just as we've discussed before, a true dialogue. So we're going to go take a quick break now. But before I do, I did want to say, in regards to Theresa May, doesn't it seem like the next coming of Margaret Thatcher when you hear her speak? Honestly. I know that's not a name you want to throw around lightly. The Iron Lady was the Iron Lady. But she is a strong conservative leader in the UK, and I find that very, very reassuring for bilateral relations going forward. I can't wait to see what 10 Downing Street and the White House put together. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break here. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network and the HoloNet.
You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth. Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Holloway, and I hope you're enjoying our podcast so far. It's been exciting putting this together for you, and I'm looking forward to many more to come. I did want to let you know that in setting up the HoloNet and getting everything launched here, we've gone ahead and set up a page on Patreon.com. Now, if you haven't heard of Patreon, Patreon is a website that's similar to other crowdfunding sources that allows you to support on a month-to-month basis those sources, those artists, and those groups that you really care about and that you're passionate about. And I hope that we can ignite passion in a lot of people to become more involved in the political process, and also to become involved in the conversation and to keep that political dialogue alive. So I'd like to humbly ask you today to consider becoming a patron of the HoloNet on Patreon.com, and you can access that at Patreon.com/theHoloNet. We have various levels of patronage. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, which unlocks exclusive content for the Patreon community, such as a feed of patron-only content. Then you have a $5 option, which gives you behind-the-scenes access to blog about the different inspirations that we have. It'll give you access to patrons-only polling. And then we have a $10 option, which gives you a signed digital poster plus everything else. $20 option, which gives you name in the credits on the site, and all other rewards. And we even have a segment sponsor package available on Patreon, which is $125 a month, which entitles you and your business to a 60-second ad as a segment sponsor during the podcast, of course, subject to content approval. So if you would like to become a patron of the HoloNet, we would be greatly thankful to you, and it's going to go toward a solid cause of generating this sort of millennial constitutional conservative content that is so lacking in our media today. So thank you for your time, for your consideration, and for being a part of the HoloNet. Here we hold the line against the night, and the millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Lanterns authorization code accepted. Logging in. Your access to the HoloNet has been approved. Please stand by. You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Hey everybody, we're back. Thanks for sticking with me. I did want to start out this segment reviewing real quick. It appears that Congressman Jason Chaffetz out of Utah is seeking to disband the law enforcement arms of the Bureau of Land Management and the US Forrest Service, which is kind of a big deal to me. I live in Arizona, and Arizona is a very, very high percentage of federal land. I know state and federal land combined, we're at about 87%, I believe, and Utah is about 66% just federal land, second only to Nevada, which is 81% federal land. Altogether, all said and told, if you live west of Texas, about half of the total land is federally owned. So it's either Bureau of Land Management, military reservation, or a national park or a national monument. So this is huge. I mean, just recently there was a request for purchase that was put out for several thousand submachine guns for the Bureau of Land Management and the US Forrest Service. That's insanity. I mean, unless these guys are being used to supplement the Border Patrol, what on earth do they have need for that kind of firepower? I mean, I could see needing a good hunting rifle in case you run into something in the woods that's a lot bigger than you are. I could see, good old-fashioned double-barrel shotgun, sidearms, all that. But a submachine gun? I think Representative Chaffetz said it best, that our park rangers and that our BLM agents need to be less Rambo and more Andy Griffith. I might have gotten that backwards from the quote. But still, notwithstanding, I firmly support this measure. I mean, the only big annoyance I have with Congressman Chaffetz right now is he was also pushing for a bill requiring the federal government to sell these lands back to the states, which I'm a huge proponent for. I mean, Arizona tried to do this with a sovereignty act on a state level to demand that from the federal government. That didn't go through last go around, even though I voted for it. But this should be a huge push from every state that has a large quantity of federally owned land, especially in Bureau of Land Management Trust. We need to get those lands back under state control. Constitutionally speaking, there is no good cause for this much land to be owned and occupied by the federal government, keeping people from purchasing it, grazing on it, utilizing it in whatever way they see fit based on the free market capitalist system. I mean, let's get back to freedom here. I don't want the federal government to be my landlord. Well, that's really about all I had to go over on Congressman Chaffetz. But we actually just got something in here at the HoloNet. That sound you're going to come to recognize means we just got a really interesting story come in. It appears that the new ambassador to the United Nations, the former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, has come out swinging against Russia in the Ukraine. Just on the eve of new hostilities erupting in the Donetsk area of the Ukraine, where Russian-backed separatists have been fighting with the Ukrainian army. And her remarks were just a complete departure between the seeming amity that President Trump has been attempting to foster with the former Soviet KGB colonel, I believe was his rank, Mr. Vladimir Putin. So let's go real quick to the quote that she has here. This is courtesy of CNN. Haley was much more definitive. She said, "I consider it unfortunate that the occasion of my first appearance here is one in which I must condemn the aggressive actions of Russia," she said. "We do want to better our relations with Russia. However, the dire situation in eastern Ukraine is one that demands clear and strong condemnation of Russian actions. The sudden increase in fighting in eastern Ukraine has trapped thousands of civilians and destroyed vital infrastructure, and the crisis is spreading, endangering many thousands more," Haley added. "This escalation of violence must stop." Now, some analysts, according to CNN, have been theorizing that this new aggression in the Donetsk region is a Russian test of U.S. resolve, or perhaps an attempt to send the Ukraine government a message that after years of Obama administration support, the Trump administration is likely to be more friendly to Moscow than Kiev. Really, only time will tell how this plays out. But for the time being, fighting between the Russian-backed rebels from the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic and the Ukrainian army has resumed and in fact exploded only a day after President Trump had his first phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So that took place this past Sunday. Now, Russia is saying the Ukraine started the escalation. Ukraine's pointing the finger back at Moscow and back at the Russian-backed rebels. It's very difficult to tell, but I definitely see the aggressive posturing of Vladimir Putin attempting to assemble the spiritual successor of the Soviet Union and perhaps even the Russian Empire here. Now, this is something that we've wanted to touch on for quite some time now. And I think I'm actually going to take a whole show to do it, is I don't believe that Vladimir Putin is seeking to reinvigorate and recreate the Soviet Union, because I don't believe the Soviet Union ever truly died. The Soviet Union, instead of collapsing, it really more rebranded and divested, because most of the responsibilities held by the Soviet central government during the reign of the Soviet Union were broken off into various international organizations, such as the Commonwealth of Independent States, such as the Eurasian Economic Cooperation, I believe it was the EEC rather, and also the Mutual Defense Pact kind of covered the military end of things, and all of the capitals of these former republics look to Moscow for guidance. They always have, and they always will, with the notable exception of the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, because they believed right from the outset that they were illegally occupied and largely returned to their pre-occupation status following the collapse of the Soviet Union. But now we see a resurgent Russia seeking to take back the ancestral heart of the the Orthodox faith, the Orthodox Christian faith. See, if you're not too up on your Russian history, you might not know this. But for many in the Orthodox Christian faith, the Crimea and the eastern Ukraine hold a similar significance as being a holy land as Israel holds for Jews and for Christians and for Muslims. It is a holy mission of theirs to protect and to defend the Crimea. Now, while we're talking about holy wars that seem to be brewing and erstwhile imperial ambitions, just south of Russia, we have President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, who seems to be continuing to embrace neo-Ottomanism and an Islamist view of the world, as they continue to engage in Syria and engage against the Kurds who are fighting for their freedom and who are fighting against ISIS. All very, very disturbing. And then further, you look to the east, you look to China. China now making huge trouble in the South China Sea, seeking to enforce their claim of the 9-dash line, that they have an ancestral historic claim to such a massive body of water that would put them just offshore from the Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore. And that would give them a stranglehold on global shipping. A lot of things to think about here. A lot of coming troubles that are brewing. A lot of clouds on the horizon for the Trump administration going into 2017 and into the next 4 years. Really makes you consider all the internal strife that we're looking at right now. Do we really have time for this? We have the EU seeming to crumble before our very eyes. Brexit has already been approved by the Parliament. Now you have Marine Le Pen rising to prominence and will likely be in the second runoff for president of France with her Front National party. And she has already said that she hails Brexit as a great victory and that Frexit would not be far behind under her administration. So we're looking at the disintegration of the EU with France's imminent departure, if Marine Le Pen is elected, Russian territorial ambitions, a crumbling Ukraine, a resurgent Ottoman Empire potentially under the guise of our old ally Turkey with President Erdogan at the helm, and a revanchist China who now seeks to assert naval dominance in the Pacific. And here we are in the United States, at each other's throats. The left completely unwilling to accept that Donald Trump was rightfully elected President of the United States through our Federalist Republic electoral college system. And that no matter who won the popular vote, it is irrelevant. The Electoral College spoke and spoke clearly. Our system worked the way it is supposed to. And our president is President Donald J. Trump. The time has come to get to work. The time has come to meet in the middle and hold the line against the night. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to wrap things up. Nice, neat little package. And we're going to talk about our next upcoming show for week 2 of February. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Radio Network. Are you ready to join the Millennial Conservative Resistance? Log on to www.thehollownet.blogspot.com for all that you need to know. There you'll find stories, opinions, videos from the HoloNet, and also new contributors bringing voices you wouldn't expect on topics you wouldn't imagine. That's thehollownet.blogspot.com. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now, with you.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Alright, and now for the final segment of the HoloNet for week 1 of February in the year of our Lord 2017. I get to the story I've been wanting to talk about all dang day. Yes, folks, it's the Battle Royale. The big one. The fight to end all fights. The battle. Senators Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders, mano a mano, debating over the future of Obamacare. Oh, this is going to be so good. Now, for a little bit of background, my friend Will and I used to work together, and we actually worked with the other two gentlemen that I'm going to try to bring on the show as well. And in our office, we worked in a call center, and around the time President Barack Obama was elected, we had great political discussions. I mean, it was like sitting in the Situation Room, us going back and forth. Will being the progressive, liberal, bull moose figure, and me being constitutional conservative. And then we had another friend of ours who was really into social justice, and another friend who was just straight laced conservative. Straight up and down establishment conservative, more or less. And we used to get into it. We used to mix it up, and we were always really cool and civil, which is why I want to have these guys on, because it's going to be interesting, but nobody's going to yell, scream, and cuss, hopefully. Otherwise, I'm going to have to bust it out. This little guy again. Yeah, I'm going to try not to do that anymore. I know it's hard on the ear. But we were all so looking forward at the beginning of this 2016 election. We were looking forward to a Bernie Ted Cruz debate, because that would be the definitive debate, I think, of the 21st century. I mean, that would be Daniel Webster style stuff. The Webster-Hayne debate was the famous debate between Senator Daniel Webster of Massachusetts and Senator Robert Hayne of South Carolina in 1830 on the topic of protectionist tariffs. Ironic how we now have the most protectionist president probably in 100 years. But I think this will be the next big historical debate that people study for 100 years. Will be the Cruz-Sanders debate on socialized medicine. Now, this is going to take place on CNN, so I'm looking at The Hill right now, if you want to check out their article on it. It's going to be on CNN February 7th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's going to be moderated by Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, and this comes basically on the eve of the final death blow that is being struck to the Affordable Care Act. So this seems like a last-ditch attempt to kind of get the plurality of the American people behind defending Obamacare. If you look at it from CNN's partisan perspective and from certainly Bernie Sanders' perspective. And this is the final opportunity for Ted Cruz to simply devastate the flawed argument that is socialized medicine in the United States. That socialized anything is completely incompatible with the American notion of freedom and that constitutional principles that our founders built our nation upon. The very notion of socialized medicine scares the daylights out of me. And here we have Bernie Sanders, who is an avowed democratic socialist, or social democrat, as he likes to refer to himself, and he models many of his policies off of European-style socialism. So take a look at Sweden and Finland and those nations of Europe to get a good idea of what he's driving at. Now, these are definitive nanny states with massive tax burdens on their population, very little social and economic mobility, and it's not the engine of growth that this country needs right now, and that President Trump is looking to unleash, and that the Republican-controlled Congress is looking to unleash through the rollback of regulations. So I think this is going to be a huge opportunity for the case for constitutional conservatism, I should say, to be argued before the American people, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm predicting a knockdown, drag-out, no-holds-barred match, and I honestly believe that Ted Cruz is going to come out on top of this one. You may disagree with me. You may hold some negative opinion of Ted Cruz held over from the election. I've always been a huge fan of him. You'll find that out as we go. But I am incredibly excited about it, and that's going to really be the centerpiece, I think, for the next HoloNet podcast, which is going to take place. Oh, let me pull up my calendar application here. It's going to take place on the 9th, so 2 days later. So definitely get yourself to your laptop or to your phone or however you choose to listen to Lanterns Radio and tune in for that. I'll make sure we have that uploaded in a nice, timely fashion. And we're going to have the after-action report from the Bernie Sanders Ted Cruz debate, which is sure to go down in history as one of the most pivotal and crucial in the history of the United States. And we're also going to attempt to have on our roundtable, although I'm really going to stop promising that because schedules conflict. But no, that's on the drawing board, that we're going to create the Millennial roundtable of the HoloNet, and we're going to start bringing people together. We're going to start showing you opinions that you would not otherwise see and hear, and we're going to start arguing constitutional conservatism on its merits. We're going to fight to hold the line against the night using principles, not people. I've said some positive things about the president during this podcast because I believe he's doing well right now. And I've always said that when he's doing well, support him. When he's doing good for the country, support him. When he's not, speak truth to power. One instance where it was not was putting out a tweet threatening to pull funding from UC Berkeley due to rioting that occurred when Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos was set to speak. I don't think it would be wise to threaten colleges with a loss of funding because a small group of people decided to riot and burn down a couple of trees on the college campus. That's all I'm going to say about that. I find the actions of those rioters, and they are rioters, absolutely deplorable, to use their own word and throw it back at them. Absolutely abhorrent and shameful. Now, I don't agree with Milo Yiannopoulos on a lot of things. but I do agree that the man has the right to speak and was invited to speak at UC Berkeley and was met with violence. We are a nation of laws. The perpetrators of this act should be found and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But, Mr. President, threatening to pull funding from UC Berkeley, it's an empty threat, and it only exacerbated an already unpleasant situation. So that's all I'm going to say about UC Berkeley. Now, lead up to week 2 of February. As I said, the big goal for that show is to have an entire show dedicated to the executive actions of President Trump so far, to discuss the legislative agenda that is coming up. Today we brushed upon some of the agenda from Representative Chaffetz of Utah. Last show we talked about Ted Cruz's term limits amendment. We're going to review where that is now and what the status of that very important piece of legislation is. We're also going to talk about the balanced budget amendment. And here in Arizona, I know that a balanced budget interstate compact is making some progress. And I also want to see if we can get on an expert regarding the National Popular Vote interstate compact. Because truth be told, once again, if we had a national popular vote, we would be looking at a Democratic president. There is a good reason that our government was built and crafted the way it was. And we're going to go into that a little more, and we're going to reach into the Wayback Machine to one of the stories that I published while I was at the Blaze as a contributor. All that next week on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Radio Network. Before we break, want to remind you all that if you want to read my work, if you want to take a look at a couple things coming up we have for the show, our YouTube videos and all that, you can find me online at theholonet.blogspot.com. Again, that's www.theholonet.blogspot.com. You can always listen to us here on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and a vast majority of the different streaming platforms that are available, the different podcast platforms that are out there. I know Podcast Addict is one of them. And as always, you can find my work on lanterns.buzz, where I am also a written contributor there. And you'll find some amazing stories from the truly incredible writing staff that we have there at lanterns.buzz. So with that, I'm going to say to you now, good night, God bless, thanks for listening.
You are listening to the Lanterns Radio Network, where Americans come together to illuminate the truth. Turn it up loud and proud until the knob breaks off. Lanterns, illuminating the truth.